The entire courtroom burst into laughter. When my younger brother pointed at me and said, "Your Honor, my brother couldn't run a lemonade stand, let alone a company." Even the people sitting behind him smiled. My own father shook his head. My mother looked embarrassed. And for a moment, I just sat there quietly while everyone enjoyed the joke. What none of them knew was that in less than 10 minutes, the judge would open a sealed document that would completely destroy the story my family had spent 20 years telling about me. The same family that called me a failure. The same family that laughed when I lost my job. The same family that told everyone I would never amount to anything. They had no idea that Grandpa had spent years preparing for this exact moment. And when the truth finally came out, nobody laughed. Not my brother. Not my parents. Not even the lawyer. Because sometimes karma doesn't arrive with anger. Sometimes it arrives in a sealed envelope with your name on it. My name is Ethan Parker, and this is the story of how my family spent 20 years treating me like a disappointment before discovering that Grandpa had left me everything. I wasn't always the family failure. At least, I don't think I was. Growing up, I got decent grades, stayed out of trouble, and worked harder than most kids my age. But none of that mattered because my younger brother Ryan had something I didn't. He knew how to make people like him. Ryan was charming, funny, confident, kind of person who could walk into a room and have everyone laughing within 5 minutes. Parents loved him. Teachers loved him. Relatives adored him. And over time, they started comparing me to him. At first, the comparisons were small. Why can't you be more outgoing like Ryan? Why didn't you make friends as easily as Ryan? Why didn't you smile more? Then the comparisons got bigger. Ryan got a brand new truck at 16. I got told to buy my own car. Ryan dropped out of community college and my parents called him entrepreneurial. I graduated from university with honors and my father asked if I was finally going to get a real job. For years, I tried to earn their approval. Every promotion, every achievement, every milestone. Nothing changed. It was like they had already decided who I was. Ryan was the golden child. I was the disappointment. Eventually, I stopped trying. Not because I gave up on life, because I gave up on winning a competition I was never allowed to win. The only person who treated me differently was Grandpa Henry. He never played favorites. He listened. He asked questions. He remembered details. While everyone else talked about Ryan's future, Grandpa wanted to know about my work. While everyone else ignored my accomplishments, Grandpa celebrated them. He once told me something that stayed with me for years. He said people who talk the most often have the least to say. People who build. At the time, I thought it was just one of Grandpa's sayings. I didn't realize he was warning me. When Grandpa passed away at 87, the entire family suddenly became interested in spending time together again. Funny how grief works when money is involved. My aunt started discussing property values. My uncles talked about investments. Ryan practically lived at Grandma's house helping organize documents. Nobody asked him to organize. Everybody assumed the inheritance would be split evenly. Everybody except Grandpa. A month after the funeral, we gathered in a conference room downtown to hear the reading of the will. Ryan arrived wearing a designer suit. My father looked unusually cheerful. My mother spent half the morning talking about what she planned to do with her share. Nobody asked what I thought. Nobody cared. The lawyer entered carrying a thick black folder and sat at the head of the table. He adjusted his glasses and began reading. Savings accounts, personal possessions, family heirlooms. Everything seemed normal. Then he reached the final section. The room became completely silent. The lawyer cleared his throat. Regarding the ownership stake in Parker Industrial Holdings, the farmland outside Austin, and all associated investment assets, ... Everyone leaned forward. Ryan smiled. My father folded his arms confidently. My mother looked excited. The lawyer paused. Then he said something nobody expected. These assets will transfer entirely to one beneficiary. A collective gasp swept across the room. One beneficiary? That wasn't possible. The estate was worth millions. Ryan looked like he'd just won the lottery. Then the lawyer looked down at the document and spoke my name. For a second, nobody reacted. The silence was almost funny. like everyone's brain had stopped working at the same time. Then Ryan laughed, a loud, nervous laugh. Good one. The lawyer didn't smile. Ryan looked around the room waiting for someone else to laugh. Nobody did. His face changed instantly. What do you mean, Ethan? The lawyer calmly repeated himself. The sole beneficiary is Ethan Parker. My father stood up so quickly his chair nearly tipped over. My mother looked shocked. One aunt actually dropped her coffee. And Ryan looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. That was the moment everything changed. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. My father stared at the lawyer like he'd misread the document. My mother looked back and forth between me and Ryan as if waiting for someone to explain what was happening. Ryan was the first person to break the silence. That's impossible, he said. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. It's not impossible. Mr. Parker, it's clearly stated in your grandfather's will. Ryan laughed nervously. No, there has to be a mistake. Grandpa would never leave everything to Ethan. The lawyer calmly turned the document around and slid it across the table. Your grandfather signed this 6 months before his passing. It was witnessed, notarized, and reviewed by multiple attorneys. Ryan's face went pale. My father leaned forward. Why? He demanded. Why would Dad do that? The lawyer opened another folder. Mr. Parker anticipated that question. My stomach tightened. Grandpa had anticipated this. The lawyer removed a sealed envelope. On the front, written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words. Open only after the will. The room went silent again. The lawyer carefully opened the envelope and unfolded a handwritten letter. This letter is addressed to the entire family, he said. Then he began reading. If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. And if I know my family, some of you are probably very upset right now. Before anyone argues, blames Ethan, or contests this will, there are things you need to understand. For years, I watched how each of you treated people. When you thought nobody was paying attention, I watched who showed up when they needed something, and who showed up simply because they cared. I watched who respected others and who only respected success. Most importantly, I watched who valued family and who valued inheritance. Nobody moved. The lawyer continued. Ethan never asked me for money. Not once. He never asked for favors. He never expected rewards. While others were discussing what they hoped to inherit, Ethan spent his time building a life of his own. Over the last 10 years, he visited me more than everyone else combined. Not because he expected something, because he genuinely cared. My father lowered his eyes. My mother looked embarrassed. Ryan folded his arms. The lawyer kept reading. Some of you will claim this decision is unfair. Life isn't always fair. Character matters. Actions matter. The way you treat people matters. Ethan earned my trust long before he earned my inheritance. The room felt smaller with every sentence. Then came the line that changed everything. And for those wondering whether Ethan needs this inheritance, the answer is no. In fact, Ethan is already more successful than most of you realize. The lawyer stopped. Everyone looked at me. My heart skipped. I had never told my family about my company. Never told them about the investments. Never told them about the life I had quietly built. Ryan narrowed his eyes. What does that mean? The lawyer looked directly at me. Mr. Parker, your grandfather requested that I share the attached financial report. My stomach dropped, because suddenly I knew exactly what Grandpa had done. The lawyer pulled out another document, then read a number aloud. The room froze. According to the report, my privately held software company had recently been valued at over $80 million. Nobody breathed. Nobody moved. Ryan blinked. My father stared at me. My mother covered her mouth. The lawyer continued. Ethan Parker is currently the majority owner of Parker Digital Systems. Ryan looked completely lost. What? The lawyer repeated himself. Ethan founded the company 7 years ago. I could actually hear my aunt gasp. My father slowly turned toward me. You own an $80 million company? I shrugged slightly. Something like that. The silence that followed felt endless. For years, my family had treated me like the unsuccessful son, the quiet son, the disappointment. And now they were realizing they never knew anything about my life. Ryan suddenly stood up. "You knew about this?" he shouted. I looked at him calmly. "No." "Then why didn't you tell anyone?" That question almost made me laugh, because the answer was painfully simple. Nobody asked. For years, nobody cared enough to ask what I was doing. Nobody listened long enough to find out. They had already decided who I was. Why would I spend my life correcting people determined to misunderstand me? Ryan shook his head. "This is ridiculous." The lawyer cleared his throat. "I'm afraid there's one more thing." The room turned. "One more thing?" The lawyer opened the final envelope. "This contains a private message, specifically regarding Parker. Industrial Holdings, my grandfather's company, the company everyone assumed Ryan would eventually run." The lawyer unfolded the document, then began reading. "Ryan, if you're hearing this, you're probably angry, maybe even furious. I understand. But leadership isn't something you inherit. Leadership is something you earn. For years, you believed the company belonged to you. That's exactly why I couldn't leave it to you. You spent more time imagining yourself as a leader than becoming one." Ryan looked like he'd been slapped. The lawyer continued. "Ethan never asked for control. That's exactly why he's ready for it. Nobody said a word, because deep down, everyone knew Grandpa was right. Ryan wanted the title. I wanted the responsibility. And those are not the same thing." The lawyer placed the final document on the table, then quietly said something that would haunt my family for years. "Your grandfather spent the last decade preparing Ethan to take over." The room exploded with questions, but all I could think about was Grandpa's final smile. Because for the first time in my life, somebody had seen exactly who I was long before anyone else did. The room exploded with questions. My father wanted answers. My mother looked completely overwhelmed. My aunts were whispering to each other. Ryan looked like he was seconds away from losing control. The lawyer waited patiently until the noise died down. Then he cleared his throat. "There is one final instruction from Mr. Parker." The room immediately became quiet. Grandpa always knew how to command attention even after he was gone. The lawyer opened another envelope. "Ethan will not officially receive control of Parker Industrial Holdings until 60 days after the reading of this will." Ryan suddenly smiled. For the first time all afternoon, he looked hopeful. Then the lawyer continued. "During those 60 days, any family member who wishes to contest the will may do so." Ryan's smile widened. I already knew what he was thinking. Lawsuits, challenges, delays, the idea that somehow Grandpa's decision could be reversed. The lawyer wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "if any contest is filed, the contesting party automatically forfeits every asset currently assigned to them under the estate." Ryan's smile vanished instantly. Grandpa had anticipated everything. Every argument, every accusation, every attempt to manipulate the situation. The old man had planned 10 moves ahead, just like he always did. The next few weeks were exactly what I expected. Family members who hadn't called me in years suddenly wanted to talk. Cousins who ignored my messages suddenly wanted lunch. Aunts who barely remembered my birthday suddenly wanted to reconnect. Funny how wealth changes people's priorities. My father called almost every day. My mother apologized for things she had done years ago. Some of it felt genuine. Some of it felt driven by guilt. Ryan, however, disappeared completely. For nearly 3 weeks, I heard nothing from him. Then one Friday evening, he showed up at my front door. I knew immediately this wasn't a social visit. He looked exhausted, angry, desperate. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. He entered slowly, looking around the house, taking everything in. The home office, the artwork, the view, the life I'd built. For years, my family assumed I was struggling because I never talked about money. They confused privacy with failure. Ryan sat across from me. Finally, he spoke. "Did Grandpa really help you build the company?" I nodded. "Not financially." "What do you mean?" "He gave me advice." Ryan looked confused. "That's it?" "That's it." The answer seemed to frustrate him, because deep down he wanted a different explanation. He wanted some secret advantage, some hidden gift, something that would justify why things turned out differently. But there wasn't one. Grandpa gave both of us opportunities. The difference was what we did with them. Ryan stared at the floor, then quietly asked the question he'd probably wanted to ask for years. When did you become successful? I almost laughed, because the answer was simple. While everybody was watching you. That hit him harder than I expected. The room fell silent. Ryan rubbed his face. Then he said something that shocked me. I thought you hated me. I frowned. I don't hate you. You should. I looked at him carefully. For the first time in my life, he didn't sound arrogant. He sounded broken. I spent years treating you like a joke, he admitted. I stayed quiet, because he wasn't wrong. Ryan laughed bitterly. You know what the worst part is? What? I actually believed I was better than you. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then he shook his head. I built my entire identity around being the successful son. His voice cracked slightly, and it wasn't even true. At that moment, I finally understood something. Ryan wasn't my enemy. He was another victim of the same system. The family had spent years telling him he was special. Years telling him he couldn't fail. Years rewarding confidence instead of character. Eventually, he started believing it. And people who build their self-worth on praise often collapse. When reality arrives, the next month passed quickly. The transfer process moved forward. The company became mine. The land became mine. The inheritance officially closed. And for a while, everything seemed peaceful. Then the auditors arrived. At first, I thought it was routine. Just paperwork. Compliance reviews. Normal corporate procedures. I was wrong. Very wrong. Because hidden inside years of company records was something nobody expected. Including Grandpa. Someone had been stealing money. A lot of money. Millions. Discovery triggered a full investigation. Financial records were reviewed. Transactions were traced. Accounts were analyzed. And eventually the truth emerged. The person responsible wasn't a stranger. It wasn't an outside executive. It wasn't some random employee. It was my Uncle David. The same uncle who spent years lecturing everyone about responsibility. The same uncle who constantly criticized me. The same uncle who told people I would never succeed. For nearly 8 years, he had quietly siphoned money. Through shell companies and fake contracts. Millions of dollars. When the evidence became undeniable, he panicked. Then he did something even worse. He blamed Grandpa. He claimed the old man knew. He claimed everyone else was involved. He claimed he was being targeted. Nobody believed him, especially not after federal investigators became involved. The scandal spread through the family like wildfire. Relationships shattered. Arguments exploded. Secrets emerged. And for the first time, people stopped focusing on the inheritance. Because now there were bigger problems. Real problems. A few months later, Uncle David accepted a plea agreement. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. And the family finally learned something Grandpa had tried teaching them for years. Character always matters. Eventually, the chaos settled. The company recovered. The business grew. Employees stayed. Customers stayed. Life moved forward. One evening, nearly 2 years later, the family gathered again. This time at Grandma's 91st birthday. The atmosphere felt completely different. No inheritance discussions. No competition. No arguments. Just family. Ryan arrived early. Helped set up tables. Played with the kids. Stayed humble. The transformation surprised everyone. Especially me. At one point, he walked over carrying 2 drinks. Then handed one to me. We stood quietly watching the sunset. Finally, he smiled. You know, he said. What? Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing. I laughed. Yeah. Ryan nodded. I used to think he chose you because he loved you more. I looked at him. And now? He smiled. Now I realize he chose you because you were ready. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he added something else. Something I'll never forget. The funny part is, I probably needed to lose everything to finally grow up. I couldn't argue with that. Because sometimes failure teaches lessons success never can. As the evening continued, I noticed something strange. Nobody treated me differently because of the money. Not anymore. They treated me differently because they finally knew who I was. And that felt better than any inheritance. Much later, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone on Grandma's porch. The same porch where Grandpa and I had shared countless conversations. The night air was calm. The stars were bright. And for the first time in years, everything felt peaceful. I thought about the inheritance, the company, the lawsuits, the family drama, the betrayal, the apologies, the victories. And I realized something important. The greatest revenge was never getting rich. It was never proving people wrong. It was never becoming successful. The greatest revenge was becoming someone whose value didn't depend on anyone else's opinion. Because the moment you stop chasing approval, you become free. And once you're free, nobody can control your happiness. Not family, not critics, not the people who underestimated you. Nobody. I smiled toward the night sky, thinking about Grandpa, thinking about his final lesson, then quietly whispered 2 words, "Thank you." And somehow, for the first time in a very long time, it felt like enough. The end? Final message. The people who underestimate, you are often judging a version of you that no longer exists. Keep building. Keep growing. Let your actions speak louder than their assumptions. One day the truth won't need an introduction.